Yeah, it's a Kaufman movie, all right.
They should have thought about ending things like 20 minutes earlier.
All right. So this is I'm thinking of ending things, the latest Charlie Kaufman movie.
No,
Now before we
it's
get
you
into
that I'm thinking we're ending things.
oh, and Kaufman is such a unique kind of auteur writer director. I feel like we should talk about like our own like what we think about his movies, like in general, just to get an idea where we're coming from on this.
Okay.
Just very
Uh,
briefly. We don't need to go into every single movie he's ever done. Um,
okay. So, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind is my personal favorite movie
yeah,
ever. Um,
it's a great film. Yeah,
and then I thought adaptation was really good, really interesting, very creative. And being John Malkovich is just this very bizarre, quirky classic.
yeah,
The Charlie Kaufman's debut, directorial debut, um, Synecdoche, New York. I can't say I was a fan. I watched it. I found it interesting in the sense that it was interestingly constructed and it was an interesting idea, but I did not connect with it. It was so overwhelmingly bleak, and the concepts within were just strange. The metaphors didn't really click with me. I understood it. I would like to say that I don't think I got it, but I feel like I got it. I just didn't like it.
yeah. That's
Uh,
completely fair.
and then I missed Anomalisa. I do want to watch that. And then there's this. So
All right. So, yeah, like I love adaptation. I actually did a variation for my storytelling class in college. I won an award for it.
neat.
So I love adaptation. I thought that movie was very extremely clever, and I love the twists and turns of it. Being John Malkovich was entertaining. It's not my favorite movie of that kind, but it's still like okay, it's definitely different. Uh, Throw Sunshine Spotless Mind. I'm right there with you. Love that movie. It's a great movie. Objectively great. I have not seen Serendoche, New York, so I can't speak about that one. I did say Anomalisa, which was a movie that at the time, that was me and Grant saw that, and we just kind of walked out like, I don't get it.
Okay.
Was kind of
Um,
towards it.
I should say one thing about Eternal Sunshine.
Mm-hmm.
I remember when I first checked out the actual original script for it,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember feeling a very distinct difference between the script and the film, the original draft of the script anyway, and the final film. And I remember really just not liking the original script at all, because it was a lot darker and bleaker and more cynical and hopeless. Some of those themes still made it through to the film, but they made it through to the film in ways that were less like doom minded. And I remember thinking that if that actually ended up being a more faithful adaptation of the original script, I probably wouldn't like the movie.
And I think I can
So
show the fact that I think Charlie Kaufman works better when other directors handles material versus when
re
he handles it.
yeah,
Which kind of brings us to this movie. I'm
yeah.
thinking of ending things. Neither of us cared for it. I think it's pretty safe to say.
So here's an interesting thing for it. Here's the interesting thing about it, though. It is an adaptation of someone else's writing.
True.
It is a book, and the book was apparently. I've been reading some reviews on Letterboxd, and they pointed out that the original book's intent of exploring the themes was from a different angle, and this movie kind of explores similar themes, but in a different way, which is kind of where the whole idea of adapting a book into a film, like that's where the art of it comes in, and I respect that.
Yeah.
But I would say this movie is kind of cut up into four acts.
Give or take. Yeah, I would say it's a 4 or 5 act structure.
I would
Um,
say that the first one is when they're in the car heading to the parents' house. The second act is when they're in the parents' house. The third act is when they're in the car heading away from the parents' house. And the fourth act is the high school.
I would even go as far as argue is that the second act ends after they have dinner, and then a third act happens during the whole kind of residential sequence, and then the
Okay,
fourth act happens when they get in the car, and the fifth act, the final act, happens in the school. Um,
I can see that. I can see that, but I feel like the time they're in the house just escalates as one thing.
you definitely
Just
argue.
gets
It's more like there's
increasingly
definitely a
weird.
genuine shift in tone and pacing, like after the dinner
Yeah.
ends. With,
So yeah, that's. But we're basically on the same page about that.
yeah,
So let's. Do you want to just
yeah. Like I'll just get my general thoughts
without
on this. Try to like avoid spoilers for the most part.
yeah
Um,
without getting into spoilers? I think that we can discuss our feelings on each section of the film
yeah.
without spoiling it very much.
Well, like, I
So
want to touch some general ideas first because I do feel like this movie does highlight some of Kaufman's weaker abilities in his writing styles.
sure.
And I read a very interesting article from the Guardian about this. It basically like Kaufman doesn't really know how to write women. Um, like
Really?
at least in regards to there I once you kind of hear the argument, kind of like okay, I can see definitely what they're saying. And it's kind of hard not to see it when you look at movies like this, where you kind of, with the exception of Charles Under the Spotless Mind, I would say that would be the one case where this rule doesn't really apply. But like in
I
most,
feel like I've known women like the one that stars in this movie.
true, but the way he presents it as this kind of like this chaotic, unknowable force of nature versus like an actual person, which is I feel like
I
to me, that's the way I
no,
personally got out of it.
no,
Um,
I have to hard disagree on that. I have to hard disagree on that.
mhm.
And I feel like that may be something that you're taking from the article. Um,
I got it from the movie because I never got a consistent personality from this character. I feel it flip flopped all like from beginning to end of the movie, which
um,
is emblematic of the fact that it's all like the spoiler that happens towards the end of the movie, the kind of revelation of what it all actually is. Um,
well, but she is deeply depressed and nihilistic, and her her kind of wishy-washiness towards different aspects of her life in the film all come from the fact that she is deeply depressed and doesn't really feel like committing to any of the things in front of her because she doesn't actually like any of them that much. She has moments where she's like, yeah, I guess this is all right. It's not that bad. And she still has a certain level of empathy, but generally, and I find it interesting that the movie is titled what it is, or the book even, because the way that the theme of the film goes, um, it could be talking about her wanting to end the relationship or her wanting to end her life. And I always took it as her wanting to end her life, like from the moment I read the title. And that might be a reflection of my own depression. But the impression that I got of the portrayal of this woman, if you haven't dealt with that kind of ambient day-to-day depression where you want to kill yourself but you don't really care enough to do it, and you're kind of surviving it and holding off on feelings in hopes that you'll actually connect with something enough to motivate you to stick with the experience, like, I can see how someone might see that as an unrealistic thing, but I can tell you, as someone who has lived it and who has had friends who have lived it and are living it, that is not an unrealistic thing. It is not some force of nature kind of thing. This is
I,
just a severely fucked up person.
I hope like I see where you're coming from. I see what you're saying. I don't want to like attack it as if I'm attacking your personal beliefs on that. I think the way I saw it is more like I didn't feel this character had enough autonomy outside of the other person the movie was really about. From beginning to end, the boyfriend Jake, like she doesn't really make any thoughts or decisions that is outside their relationship, to the point where it kind of becomes distracting and frustrating.
Well,
Um,
but she's stuck with him the whole fucking movie. That's kind of the
True,
whole
but she doesn't really talk about her own family, her own like. Which talks about her work. That's unfair. But outside of that, for the most part, everything that happens is a reaction to something that is about him, not necessarily about her own feelings. She doesn't really have much autonomy in the plot that's outside of what he wants and does.
that's part of it though, because you're not thinking about your own feelings, because your own feelings are kind of muted. Your
Mm-hmm.
own feelings are kind of a non-entity. You're thinking of ending things because that's where your own feelings are.
Mm-hmm.
You're thinking of ending your life. You don't have a motivation to go day to day, and you're kind of just observing things as they come and trying to be pleasant with people and trying to be like, well, I wonder if this is a good idea. I don't know.
Mhm.
It is very much centered around the relationship because it's about them. It's about this one night in their life where they are taking this trip to go see his parents, and he's being kind of a prick throughout a lot of the movie.
Mhm.
Like, he's ignoring what she's saying, like he's dismissing her, he's kind of gaslighting her. There were moments, honestly, there were moments in the movie where I was vaguely reminded of Mother.
Yeah, it honestly reminded me of that too.
There
Yeah.
was a bit of like the whole gaslighty shit that he was doing, where like he's dismissing her and telling her it's fine and ignoring what she's saying and what she needs. Like, that's all linked, and I feel like she's not focused on herself, but a lot of her internal monologue when she's talking about what she's doing and what she's thinking that is her. Like, at the beginning of the movie where she's thinking about her life and other things, and he keeps fucking interrupting her while she's trying to think to herself. You know, that's
Well, like to kind of bounce off that though, like going back to Mother, at least, and Mother, as much as I did not like that movie, I never questioned her as like a consistent character. And this may just be when I just see things differently on this. I never saw this character like for me. What every other character in the movie was consistent. I feel like she was the most inconsistent, and that may just be from like a personal experience thing. I don't know. That's just how I personally read it. Um, and I felt like to me, like, was that
that's interesting.
yeah, like that goes to like maybe my mental health experience is different from yours to me.
Yeah,
That's why we see this in a different way. Because it is different person to person. I'm definitely going to acknowledge that.
so I thought
Uh,
she was consistent. I didn't feel her inconsistent at all.
to me, it did because, well, like for example, like this goes slightly into spoiler territory.
Well, let's hang on. Let's get into a full deep talk about this later, because it'll be easy to get caught in the weeds. Let's talk about it when we have full spoiler free. Let's just talk about our general feelings on the movie
Okay,
initially,
fair
because
enough.
I feel like it's a deeper discussion that we can dig into and just forget about the rest of the review if we really wanted to.
It's like this also goes on how you interpret the ending of the film too, which we'll get into that too, which also kind of
Yeah,
restructures how you feel about everything else that came before it. Um,
yeah.
and I think that's kind of its own discussion too, and it goes into my feelings on how this particular character is portrayed one way or another.
Yeah.
Um,
So they're on this road trip, and basically, the whole movie, in my eyes, is centered around her interactions with kind of these weird socially awkward experiences, and her wondering what's best for her life and how to interact with other people, and just kind of being awkward. And there are parts of the movie, especially in the second, well, the part in the house, what you see is the second and third act, um, where things get kind of surreal and weird in a very Charlie Kaufman kind of way.
yeah,
And I actually really enjoyed this part of the movie. I really thought it could go somewhere. I liked the implications. I liked the unreliability of the environment. Um, and then when they got back in the car heading out, I was kind of wondering what would happen. And I kind of liked how things were kind of moving in a weird direction. And there was an uneasiness to it. But then for the last part of the movie, I like for half of that section, I was like, okay, where is this going?
yeah,
It might, I think it's going to end here. And then it went into the whole thing that it did, and I just was deeply disappointed and unsatisfied.
yeah.
So,
Um, yeah, so it really seems like the big divide we have is how we interpreted the main character.
okay, so you
Uh,
basically agree with everything I just said about the movie.
pretty much everything else, yeah.
Yeah.
Like for me, I started getting frustrated a little up to that point, kind of like what you're going to, where like the gaslighting and all that kind of prickly stuff he was doing just got to the point where it's like, oh, dude, we just knock it the fuck off. Like I was just getting fed up with it. Um,
It's like,
yeah.
dump him, find someone else, dump him.
Um,
Uh, but again, that's part of her internal conflict as we're going throughout the movie, is whether or not she should leave him because of his shortcomings versus the fact that,
yeah, that
people
goes
kind
into
of
larger
suck.
arguments about stuff I can't talk about without going into spoilers.
Yeah.
uh,
But yeah, basically, interesting movie, but ultimately dissatisfying. And
it feels like Charlie Kaufman
pretentious.
needs somebody to rein him in a bit.
Yeah, kind of fucking pretentious. Kind
Yeah,
of
very pretentious. Yep.
just got to the point where it got it seemed like it was holding it for a bit, but then it jumped the shark, and I just wasn't interested, and I was upset that I'd been let on.
There was a
So
part where I was like, did I just like get drunk and switch to the midnight gospel and just not notice?
um, so yeah. Anyway, that's that. I would give it a solid maybe 5 or 6 out of 10.
Yeah, I'm there with you.
I feel like it has something to offer, but it doesn't stick the landing.
I can see what people would get from this. I think there's a lot of different ways you can interpret it. It is a coffin film, and I think it's going to carry its own like niche fan base just on that factor alone.
And I think that there are going to be people who relate to the main character in a different way than you, well, didn't, I guess. Because I definitely
mostly because I didn't see her as the main character. I think that's kind of what kind of frustrated me about the movie. But we can talk about that when we get spoilers.
All right, sure.
So you just want to spoilers from here on out?
Sure, let's do spoiler talk. Let's go into it.
Okay.
Dig in, buddy.
So just jumping right to the end here, I kind of interpreted this as.
By the way, all this is good whiskey. This is really refreshing, nice whiskey.
And if they want to sponsor us, my email is.
Yeah, right.
I
love this brand, and this is a good, refreshing summer whiskey. It's light while still having good flavor. It's citrusy without being lemony or orangey, and I really like it. Give us money, please. Anyway.
But yeah, so like I think my biggest frustration in the movie is the reason I kind of think the main character is kind of inconsistent is because my interpretation of this, and I'll be curious to see what your thoughts are on this,
Sure.
is like I kind of just interpreted it like this is all just in sad janitor Jake's head as he's imagining like what life could have been with a woman that loved him. And a lot of it is just the projection of his own insecurities with romance and affection, which also kind of saw, like I kind of saw as a Kaufman self-insert.
I kind of get that.
Who is insecure and unrecognized and left alone to his own device. You know, it could have been great if somebody just loved him enough. And that kind of bothers me by that interpretation. I recognize there's a lot other takes you can take from this. That's what I personally got out of it, which to me, my issues is more frustrating.
I can understand that on a certain level. I think that in a certain way that was the intent of the movie. However, at the same time, if you view it exclusively as that, then you would have to like basically dismiss a lot of the stuff that happens directly from her perspective earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like there's a lot of interaction that happens between her, like the scene in the house. Like clearly the scene in the house is the strongest thing in the movie, where they have the dinner scene and there's this very strange, like it has that really surreal, weird thing with Michael Thulis and Toni Collette.
Yeah.
Where they're both playing like these very strange caricatures of their characters, and the main guy is just kind of being weird and like standoffish with them and like brushing off any affection from his mom. And then she's just sitting there trying to make the best of it and be polite and carry conversation and like be complimentary. And it's really, in some ways, excruciatingly awkward.
Yeah.
But where that goes from there, after they're done eating dinner, is that it's snowing more and more outside, and she's getting worried about getting home, and they keep on saying that they have chains for the snow tires and they'll be fine. And it gets into this weird thing where people start disappearing and reappearing around the house at different parts of their lives, and she, like, the mother comes back really young and then really old, and like, or the other way around, and the dad is also really old, and she goes up and upstairs and explores other parts of the house and runs into them at different stages of their life. It's this really surreal, weird thing.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, but my problem with it is that it ultimately ends up being pointless.
Yeah, they do kind of explain in context in the third or fourth act, depending on your viewpoint, where it's saying like, "Oh man, I'm just viewing it as like possible futures or whatever," and it's like I didn't like how you apply that is up to you.
But that's my problem with it. That's very much a kind of. There's so much material in the first half of the movie that doesn't really make sense from that perspective.
So you're
Because she's
saying it's like almost too much open to interpretation.
yeah, she's wandering around like wondering what the hell's going on. There's no real structure to what's happening. She's kind of just like trying to figure out what's happening around her as it happens. And I don't know if it's meant to imply that this dude has Alzheimer's or something, and he's reconstructing his memories of his life and what his life could have been around this TV show that he saw, and like these things that he's going through in his head is him re-experiencing other parts of his life, you know, with her as the stand-in for him wandering through his house of memories. But it all just seems really pointless
And insecure, while also kind of like it kind of plays up to that myth of like the tortured genius, the tortured unloved genius, the kind of thing, which Kaufman is something Kaufman's explored a few times in his movies.
I mean, he's a very his films just radiate loneliness.
Yeah, and it's like he's a very talented writer. But I feel like this one in particular, just to me personally, felt more insecure than his other movies and more self-reflection because of that. Like
There's a weird nihilism to it. That's
yeah, like and it's just,
that is in the rest of his movie. Even Synecdoche was super bleak,
yeah.
but this feels different. There's something to it, which harkens back to things like abuse and neglect, and it's very unsettling when you think about it.
It's yeah, like it's uncomfortable to watch, and you're at the same time it just feels like I don't want to say entitlement because it's not that.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to think of like a synonym that better describes what I'm trying to talk. Like, it does kind of feel like, oh, I wouldn't be this way if people treated me differently, kind of thing.
It comes across to me more as there's a shoegaze soul to this. There's very much a, you know, the kind of thoughts and monologues that that the main character is having throughout the film about the pointlessness of things and how little she cares about things and how pointless it is for people to interact and how much she hates certain things. Like, it very much has that deep air of, you know, the kind of pretentious nerd that just really thinks that they know the truth about everything and they hate everybody because nobody sees how stupid things are and they're miserable because
And nobody loved him for his secret genius.
Yeah,
Which
exactly.
especially towards the fourth and fifth act, that's where like that theme became more prevalent to me, and that's when I started to get really frustrated with the film. And I'll give you a few examples of what I mean. Like for example, when they got to like the ice cream place, and there's like the two hot girls that are in like the booth that come out and they start laughing at him, and he turns his back and he refuses to go anywhere near them because he can't deal with their gaze, something like that. And then at the very end of the film, when he's kind of having his psychotic break, he imagines him as an old man accepting this award, and those same women are out there like, "Oh, he's so genius. Oh, look, he's."
There's let's talk about that scene for a second because
I'm curious for your interpretation.
Yeah, well, because it's weird because basically he disappears into the school and she tries to follow and find him, and the janitor finds her and offers her the same slippers that the guy offered her earlier in the movie, which is making a connection between him and the guy. And then they burst, like, she goes off and she sees him and they're replaced by the actors that were playing their respective roles in like a TV show. And then those actors take over and have this extended dance sequence, which I did not give a shit about. And then it goes to this thing, which I guess is a scene from Oklahoma.
That's what I'm guessing. Yeah.
And the boyfriend character is on stage singing a song about looking back on his life and loving the life that he's had. And then he looks out into the audience, and the audience is comprised of a bunch of people, and they're all in stage makeup, like old person stage makeup, those thick, like makeup lines across their faces. And it's interesting because like his mom and his dad are out there, and they're old, but they also have the old stage makeup on.
Yeah.
But amongst the audience is, you know, the ladies from the ice cream shop who were scorning him earlier, and everyone's standing and applauding him, and it's so bizarre, and it
Yeah, like
feels really self-indulgent and narcissistic.
yeah, like and one time it feels like
Yeah.
self-aggrandizing, but also like horribly self-nihilist. Like is self-nihilistic a term? I don't know. But self-deprecating because at the same time it's like, oh, this
Yeah.
is what he could have been. This is what he should have been, rewarded and respected by all his peers. But instead, he's just sad,
No,
lonely
no, no,
dude.
no, 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 no. To me, it's him actually being, because everyone knows Kaufman's a genius. He's regarded as a genius widely. Like everyone is waiting on the next Kaufman script all the time. It's a big deal when he writes a movie. And that's him basically talking about the life he could have had, and everyone's applauding him. But in real life, no one gave a shit about him, and he's still sad.
Well, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm actually agreeing
Um,
with you. Yeah.
so I don't think that there's this assumed genius because he's had enough accolades to be able to defend the fact that he is an actual genius. There's
Oh
enough
yeah, like
people.
I don't think anyone's disputing that. I'm speaking that strictly in the language of the film.
Okay.
Uh, like I'm
Uh,
not trying to say that reflects reality. I think that's how he feels about things, but I don't
sure.
think it reflects reality.
But I found it very strange because even with that message at the end, it still feels awfully detached from the rest.
Yeah,
It feels like, and I don't think, like, maybe this woman who is the main character is not a traditionally feminine woman,
Mhm.
is not, what a lot of women might relate to. But to say that she's not realistic as a woman, I think is in and of itself.
I didn't say she wasn't realistic as a woman. I said I just didn't see her as a full character.
No, but that's what I'm saying. She's not a complete character. When
Like,
I feel like it's actually a really nuanced portrayal of that kind of depression.
maybe,
And
and that's something I might
yeah,
not have experience on that level, and that could
that's
totally
my
be on
whole
me.
point. I think that by comparing it to like this, what someone might consider the standard female experience or something, um, I think that they're not considering people who do feel like outliers and do feel like outcasts and do feel like freaks because this is how they think, this is how they are every day, and they try to be happy and they try to look happy and they try to connect with people, but inside they're just this constant monologue of how hopeless and bleak everything is. And I I appreciate the fact that there's a movie that has a character like that because you don't get to see these kinds of people in movies a lot. You generally see like, people that people are supposed to look up to or something, or characters that are supposed to at least be relatable in their troubles, or some grand tragic heroine or something. Like it's not very often you get to see a character with crippling depression
Mm-hmm.
and portrayed on a level that's so intimate that there are monologues. And this is, and we should mention, compared to the voiceover in the last movie we reviewed, the voiceover in this movie actually felt natural. It
Yes,
felt like part of the character's thought process.
I
He
will
was
agree with that.
interrupted when she was interrupted. Like, I really liked that. I really liked this character and the portrayal of this character. And I wished that at the end of the movie, it felt like it was still about this character.
Mm-hmm. I could definitely see that, and I see what you're saying, and I definitely agree with parts of it. I think for me, where I this goes to like maybe some of my own things I don't fully understand in the regards to that kind of depression. That just to me is something I'm not familiar with that in that degree. The way it looks to me is just different. I think for me, it's like I'm not against anything you're saying in terms of portraying a woman that way. I think for me, it's like I wish she, if that's the case, I wish she took a more central role in the overall narrative because I don't feel like it did. I feel like it was mostly about Jake at the end of the day, and I realize the relationship is hard to
At the
detach.
end of the day, yes. At the end of the day, I fully agree. The way that it pivots, I did not feel like it was a proper service to her character.
Yeah, so
I
like I guess that's where my frustration
and
comes from in that way. Is I didn't feel like for someone who I feel like should be the POV character and should be the main character, I felt like it was the story got too consumed by the Jake character for that to get
yes.
the full attention it deserved, and for me to feel that
Uh,
fully fleshed out that it should have been. That's where
let,
I'm
let
trying to come from.
me clarify something. When I say the whole idea of a portrayal of a woman this way, I'm mainly referring to as a response to the article that you were bringing up earlier.
Fair enough.
I'm not saying that that's your perspective, but when you read that and were like, that's interesting, I have to push back against that. Of course, I would probably need to read the article to really understand it, but I feel like that's written from the perspective of someone who does not understand this kind of depression.
Okay, I can definitely see that. I can send to you later if you want.
Sure.
But yeah, no, like by all means, push back. I have no objection to that because I could be full of shit. I often am full of shit.
No,
So,
it's a good discussion to have. So
I think that's like I just want to talk about this a little bit longer, just to kind of drive it home. And like,
I do too. I'm just really pissed off because I thought that it was going somewhere really interesting.
and it just doesn't.
And it just takes a hard left turn into like, haha, life, musicals, like
And then
fuck you,
animated
finish your
things.
movie.
Yeah.
And then of course the obvious metaphor at the end of the movie of the car never having left the high school and just being buried in snow, and her
Yep.
never having returned to her life of like pursuing her career and everything. Like she got stuck there in his life.
That's even if she was even real to begin with.
Yeah, that's its own fucking rabbit hole.
Because my interpretation was like I didn't think she was ever real. I think she existed and she was part of his life for a while. But at some point, either like because the movie offers multiple interpretations of how she could have been involved in his life.
I think she's too tangible of a character to not be real. I think
I
that
believe the
maybe
person existed. I'm not sure I believe the person existed in that time the movie takes place, if that makes sense.
I think that maybe she like the closest I can come to her not being real is her being his stand-in looking back on his life,
Mm-hmm.
where you know he crafted this stand-in character based on this TV show he was watching, and then as she goes through the movie and he kind of gets to look at his experiences in life from a more objective standpoint. And that does make more sense in regards to like the paintings and shit, because I was wondering what the hell that was about.
Yeah.
Um,
And it's like for me, like that because they offered like oh they reapproached the bar scene like the bar story where they supposedly met like three different times in different perspectives. One where she was interested in him and she kind of found a way to convince him to make the first move. Another one where she wasn't all interested and she gave him a number just to make him go away. And a third one where he was just a creeper at a bar that wouldn't stop looking at her. And that's just what it was. They offer three different stories that kind of make you question whether or not this relationship even happened to begin with.
Yeah.
And but like I believe like in this universe, I believe this person existed. I believe this interpretation of her is him kind of almost fantasizing what he wanted her to be versus how he probably felt she actually felt about him in his own mind.
I'll tell you this. I don't know if it's the whiskey or the shitty movie we just watched, or the fact that this movie kind of failed to deliver in the way that was satisfying to us. I'm not saying I want to stop this conversation, but I can tell you right now, I don't really care. Like it's and that's ultimately the failure of the movie.
Yeah.
Is that in the end, I don't feel like what it's trying to say is really that significant or interesting to be how convoluted it is.
That's very
It's very bleak. It's very wistful. It could have been interesting, but in the end, like it just comes up short and just is a statement on what like life could be great.
you have somebody that loves you like if you recognize somebody's genius their life could be great.
I don't know. I just don't think it's worth it.
No,
I just think it's worth it.
no, that's a good point. I think we're honestly like yeah, the way we're talking about it definitely makes it sound more interesting than it is, and that's kind of a failure on the movie's part. Is like you can make these interesting ideas like complicated and compelling and nuanced, but it just doesn't do that. At the end, you feel frustrated and kind of empty, but not in a way that feels deliberate.
So I think this is a good like. I've had this suspicion about Charlie Kaufman for a long time. And the biggest thing that it goes back to for me, aside from his own debut film, was reading the original script for Eternal Sunshine.
Yeah.
And there was a message that I got from the end of that movie, which I really valued, especially when I was younger and really fucked up over breakups. And that was that even knowing the potential risks that a relationship could entail, it's worth pursuing. It's worth trying again.
Yeah.
Because the things that you get along the way, the experiencing the good parts of the relationship along the way are worth it. And those are the things that you will eventually want to hold on to despite the bad. And
Yeah, I
that'll help
completely
you grow
agree.
as a person.
I love that message too.
Now, the other message of it, which was pretty much the sole focus of the script, was that if people don't remember the mistakes of their relationships, they are doomed to repeat the same patterns over and over until they die.
Because the original ending has like them just basically like getting together and wiping mind away over and over and over again, right?
Well, yes, but that's stated in the opening of the film. The opening of the film is Joel going to Lacuna Corp and basically asking for an appointment, and they pull up his file, and it just shows that for basically the last 60 or 70 years, him and Clementine have just been erasing each other from their memories over and over and over. And it's such an incredibly bleak and nihilistic way to convey that message.
Yeah.
And the way that it's done in the actual film is so much more beautiful and bittersweet and hopeful, and it carries the idea of a lesson learned, and it feels less like that pretentious fucking beatnik standing in the corner of a party smoking a cigarette saying like, it's all pointless, man. Like, and that to me is the problem with Charlie Kaufman.
Yeah, no, I agree.
And this movie, it just embodies that shit so hard.
I
really would have loved to see this movie in someone else's hands. Like, write the script, let someone else bring it to screen, because this was just fucking depressing in a way that didn't give me anything out of the experience.
And Anomalisa had the same kind of issue, not to this extreme. I feel like Anomalisa had a bit more going for it than this movie does.
I still want to see it.
But like that, I do agree. It does follow that same kind of nihilism, that just open cynicism about love and relationships and just everything else those entail. Like, nobody will ever love me. The connection I had is gone. It's just this empty void now, and I'm just going to be left alone in this nothingness until I die. That feels like a lot of Kaufman's writing in a nutshell.
Thanks for contributing your art to the world, man. Like, literally given me my favorite movie, and I just philosophically disagree.
Oh yeah, no, I'm right there with you. I think for me, the part that makes me laugh the most about that original ending was just like, how shitty are his friends that they watch this happen over and over.
Play along with it for decades.
And they never at once go, dude, just fucking move. Like,
there was no David Cross in the original script to be like, this man, look. Like,
like, dude, you've been doing this for fucking years. You've forgotten like 70 years of your life. Just go to Buffalo or like California or just go anywhere else.
A birdhouse. Oh man, it's great. It's such a good movie.
At some point, just like keep them away from each other for the love of all that is holy. Give them Tinder or something. Like, meet other people.
Another thing about this is that none of these people in his movies seem to have like friends that actually give enough of a shit to help them or push them to make a good decision. Like,
honestly, I'm not gonna lie. When my original title card for this was just gonna be like, can someone give Kaufman an OkCupid account or something? Therapist and an OkCupid account.
I think someone give this man a hug is probably better. Like, just give him a fucking hug, maybe a joint. Like, just like,
I think he's had too many of those.
No. Give him a joint and like some happy music. Like, don't let him fucking put like smoke a joint and then listen to fucking William S. Burroughs and Tool for hours. Like, give him some pop music. Give him some Beach Boys. Let him embrace like the wider side of life. Fucking enjoy your life a little bit, man. Go to a theme park or something. Like, Jesus Christ.
The Beatles. That sound like Hey Jude.
Oh man.
But yeah, I respect Kaufman as a writer and as an artist.
Like, just here comes the sun. Do. Like, yeah, the feeling of a new day, the sunrise. Life is cool, man. Like, nature is nice. Like, just go enjoy like the simple things in life, even when things are kind of shitty. Like being alive is kind of chill and cool. Like, yeah, you can have PTSD and shitloads of abuse and trauma stopping you from having productive relationships, but that doesn't mean you can't enjoy like something delicious or something every now and then. But it feels like Hoffman's just sitting in the corner smoking his cigarettes and then eating the butts out of sheer need to suffer. Like,
You know,
I,
you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of that Patton Oswalt sketch where he's talking about like Batman is like the worst superhero ever. Uh, and it's just like if Batman wasn't like fighting crime, he'd be like Gotham's worst, like overweight slam poet. Like he'd be there like smoke cigarettes, be like bang bang in the alley, boo. And I feel like that'd be Kaufman if you let him write for Hollywood. Just be this
God.
horrible slam goth poet in a bar somewhere.
I would love/hate to see Kaufman during his college years.
Oh God!
Can you imagine him in screenwriting class, like being the one turning in the projects that are just really dark and fucked up, and the teacher's like, creative, but okay.
So I've arranged an appointment for you.
Go get laid, Charlie. It's college. Leave your fucking mechanical typewriter that you insist on typing everything on in your fucking dorm room. Go to a fucking party. Take some ecstasy. Get your dick sucked. Realize that there's more to life than just suffering.
Probably the exact advice that inspired this movie.
Just opens up the movie like, I fucking hate parties. People telling me to go have a good time, get my dick sucked. What's so good about getting your dick sucked anyway? It's just a momentary chemical reaction in your brain. And like just some shit
I would love it if like if he did that, he took that advice and it just went horribly wrong. And at the end credits of his really bitter movie, it just said like in all caps like fuck you, Mr. Timmons.
Fuck you, Mr. Timmons, she bit my dick. Anyway, I'm a few fingers in. That's what she said. But yeah, just this movie's not a good time. It's pretentious. No. It's not. There's nothing worthwhile that it has to say.
Kaufman needs someone to rein him in to really be able to exemplify what's good about his work. And he's a brilliant artist. He's a brilliant writer. And I'm not here to devalue his work in any way, shape, or form. But this feels like this really is nihilism and narcissism and overindulgence kind of mixed into one batch, and it needs someone to rein him back.
For all the shit that I've been giving him over the past few minutes, I have mad respect for the guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
He is incredibly smart and talented. Just like
Adaptation is a brilliant film.
Man, I just like dude really needs to just someone needs to give the poor guy a hug.
Get him a therapist, man. Help the poor guy.
Writing is my therapy. No,
it's not. This is enabling
your trauma upon everybody else. Go figure it out. Come back and write a nice movie, or at least a movie that has value. This movie has no value.
Don't fall into that bullshit. Where artists have to suffer to create art. That's bullshit.
I didn't get anything out of this movie that was valuable. I thought I might for a while, and that was the encouraging part, and I think that's partially why I'm even more frustrated at the end.
Yeah. I think I can see why people would get something out of this. I can see why some people would like this, and there's certainly stuff to talk about in it. But yeah, I'm kind of there with you. I didn't get anything out of this. If anything, I walked away just kind of frustrated and upset, but not in a way that felt intentional, just in a way that felt like, well, that was a waste of 2 hours of my life I'm not getting back. And I hope his next movie is a bit brighter. Apparently he's got another one coming out next year. So
we'll see what happens though. Anyway, I don't think I have anything else to say about it.
I think we covered everything we can, unless we talk about more nitty-gritty stuff. I think we made our points clear.
We got to the point where I was talking about Charlie Kaufman getting his dick sucked at a college party, so I think
that does sound like the end of the line. Yeah.
Yeah, it does sound like we're talking about this. So yeah, cool. That was fun. 2 fun Netflix originals. good times.
We should have watched. Oh God, yes.
Yes, God, yes, yeah.
Oh yes, God, yes.
I that sounds fun, although potentially a little awkward. So we should review Cuties.
God. You know,
Let's
sure.
let's see what
Views.
I actually do want to see what the movie's actually about because I've heard wildly different reviews about it.
Yeah, I'll watch it. Just
People are like it's disgusting and perverted, and other people, and I get the feeling they haven't watched it, although some of them apparently have. And then there are people who are like, no, this is actually a pretty spot-on portrayal of what it's like growing up as a little preteen girl, and it's based on the director's actual life experiences. So
from what I've heard, and I'm curious to watch myself to kind of get the real perspective on what it is. Like it definitely criticizes more of her home life more than the actual industry that she got involved in, which can be a bit, I don't want to say problematic, but not quite maybe where the focus should be. But I haven't seen it, so I don't have the full context.
Yeah, and on top of that, it is French, and they're a little.
That's true too.
Okay.
We're like 50 Shades of Grey got like a PG rating.
No, that's the thing I think is that Europeans are more okay with talking about sex as a part of life. So the idea of talking about a young girl like and her initial experiences with the world of sexuality that's like just beyond, I think that might be a conversation that they can have more earnestly and without as much fear as we as Americans can.
Yeah,
and I'm hoping that doesn't get too uncomfortable, but I feel like it's at least an earnest conversation and not coming from like some kind of weird pedo place like all these fucking QAnon idiots are trying to say it is. So
yeah, no, it's bullshit.
Yeah, so we'll see what happens. I'm down to watch that. I would like to watch something that we know is not going to be a trying experience first, because these two movies. Let's watch Feels Good. I'm down to watch Feels Good Man again.
All right, I'll watch that and we can review that. Other news. If you guys haven't watched it, my newest editorial is out. Please go watch it, give it a like, and do all that jazz for me, please. We worked very hard on it, and thank you all for watching. See you next time.
All right, later.